My name is Leo Thorne, and I've spent 15 years of my life building things that last. Custom cabinets, hand-carved mantels, restoration work on century-old Victorian homes, the kind of craftsmanship that outlives the people who commission it. I take pride in precision, in measuring twice and cutting once, in joints so tight you can't slip a business card between them. I should have applied that same attention to detail to my marriage. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October when my world tilted off its axis. The autumn air carried that crisp bite that makes New Englanders feel alive, and I was walking back from Brennan's Hardware with a bag of specialty screws for a mahogany bookshelf I was building. The leaves crunched under my work boots, and I was mentally calculating the grain pattern when Silas Murphy stepped out of the coffee shop directly into my path. Silas and I went way back, high school buddies who'd drifted apart after graduation, but still exchanged pleasantries when we crossed paths in our small suburban town outside Boston. He had that uncomfortable look people get when they're about to deliver bad news they assume you already know. "Leo? Hey, man!" He shifted his weight from foot to foot, coffee cup trembling slightly in his hands. "Listen, I'm really sorry about you and Bridget splitting up. I mean, these things happen, right? But I gotta say, her new guy is quite the looker. Saw them at that jazz club downtown last week. You know, the fancy one with the pianist? She introduced him as her new partner, Grant something or other." The bag of screws slipped from my numb fingers and scattered across the sidewalk with a metallic rain sound. Silas kept talking, but his words became distant noise as my brain processed what he'd just said. We weren't divorced. We weren't even separated. Hell, we'd had breakfast together that morning, and Bridget had kissed me goodbye before heading to her real estate office, same as she had for the past 8 years of marriage. "Wait," I managed to croak out, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Silas, what exactly did you see?" His face went pale as he realized his mistake. "Oh, Jesus, Leo, the way she was all over him, holding hands, laughing. She told the bartender they were celebrating their 3-month anniversary. I just assumed 3 months. I knelt down and started collecting the scattered screws, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. 3 months ago was July. That was when Bridget had started her aggressive expansion phase at the agency, working late nights to stage homes for high-end clients. That was when she'd replaced her practical work wardrobe with designer labels I'd never seen her purchase. When she'd started wearing that expensive floral perfume that definitely hadn't come from me. "Leo, man, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "It's fine, Silas." I stood up, pocketing the screws. My voice was steady now, cold and measured. "Thanks for telling me." I walked home in a daze, but by the time I reached our colonial-style house, the one where I'd personally restored every window frame and rebuilt the wraparound porch, the numbness was burning away, replaced by something much more dangerous: calculated rage. That evening, I sat in my workshop behind the house, surrounded by the tools of my trade and the scent of wood shavings, and I started to think, really think, about the late nights, about the new clothes, about how Bridget's phone was always on Do Not Disturb during her supposed staging appointments, about how she'd become increasingly secretive about her commission checks, claiming the agency had switched to a more complex payment system. I'm a methodical man. It comes with the territory when you work with your hands for a living. One mistake with a table saw can cost you fingers. One miscalculation on a load-bearing beam can bring down a house. So when I decided to investigate my wife's betrayal, I approached it the same way I approached every project, with patience, precision, and a plan. The next morning, I called in a favor from my buddy Danny, who worked in the assessor's office. Within an hour, I had copies of every property sale Bridget had been involved with over the past 6 months. The numbers didn't add up. According to her reported commissions, she should have been bringing home about 60% of what our bank statements showed. Either she was the worst real estate agent in Massachusetts, or money was going somewhere else. That afternoon, while Bridget was at work, I did something I'd never done in 8 years of marriage. I went through her personal belongings. In the back of her closet, behind a shoebox full of old photos, I found a small leather portfolio I'd never seen before. Inside were bank statements for an account I didn't know existed, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands with a balance that made my eyes water. But the real revelation came when I examined the account details more closely. The account wasn't just in Bridget's name, it was in both our names, with my social security number listed as the primary account holder. She'd been using my identity to hide her money, making me legally responsible for any tax implications or fraud charges that might arise. That's when I realized this wasn't just adultery. It was theft, tax evasion, and identity fraud all wrapped up in one neat package. And if the IRS came knocking, they'd be looking for Leo Thorne, not Bridget Vance. I sat in my workshop that night, staring at the evidence spread across my workbench, and I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp as a chisel blade, but it was being overshadowed by something else, something cold and focused and utterly without mercy. Bridget had made two critical mistakes. First, she'd underestimated my intelligence. Second, she'd forgotten that I built everything in our house with my own hands, including some features she didn't even know existed. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My boss, Frank, didn't question it. I had enough vacation days saved up to take a month off if I wanted. But I wouldn't need a month. I'd need exactly 1 day to dismantle 8 years of marriage with the same precision I brought to every project. Bridget left for work at her usual time, kissing me goodbye with lips that had been kissing another man for 3 months. I waited until her BMW disappeared around the corner, then I got to work. First stop, the kitchen island I'd built for her 2 years ago as an anniversary gift. It was a masterpiece of hidden storage, drawers within drawers, secret compartments, and one feature that Bridget had never discovered: a hidden safe built into the base, accessible only by removing a specific sequence of wooden panels. I'd installed it as a surprise, planning to reveal it on a special occasion. Inside, I'd placed our marriage certificate, some family heirlooms, and the deed to the house. But Bridget had found the safe on her own somehow, and she'd been using it for her own purposes. It took me 40 minutes to dismantle the island completely, working with the methodical precision that had made me one of the most sought-after restoration carpenters in the Boston area. Each piece of wood was carefully labeled and set aside. I'd built it once, and I could build it again if I chose to. The safe was exactly where I'd installed it, but the contents were not what I'd left there. Our important documents had been replaced with more bank statements, receipts for expensive jewelry I'd never seen Bridget wear, and a second cell phone I didn't know she owned. I powered up the phone. No password protection. Bridget had always been careless with technology. The text message history made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to read every exchange between my wife and Grant Ashford, her quite-the-looker boyfriend. The messages went back 4 months, starting with flirtation and escalating to private content that made me want to put my fist through the wall. But it was the most recent exchange that really caught my attention. Grant: when are you going to leave him? I'm tired of sneaking around. Bridget: soon. I just need to move a few more assets into our account. Leo's too stupid to notice, and once everything's transferred, I'll file for divorce and take him for everything he's worth. Grant: you're brilliant, baby. He'll never see it coming. Bridget: men like Leo are so predictable. All I have to do is cry and act helpless, and he'll probably let me keep the house. I stared at that last message for a long time. Men like Leo. Predictable. Too stupid to notice. Well, she was about to find out just how predictable I could be. I spent the rest of the morning documenting everything, photographing bank statements, copying text messages, creating a detailed timeline of her financial fraud. Then I made 3 phone calls that would change Bridget's life forever. The first call was to my lawyer, Jim Morrison, not the rock star, just a guy who'd helped me with some contract disputes over the years. I scheduled an emergency appointment for that afternoon and asked him to prepare divorce papers with a specific request. I wanted to freeze all joint assets immediately, citing suspected fraud. The second call was to the IRS fraud hotline. I provided them with detailed information about the offshore account that had been opened using my identity without my knowledge or consent. I made it very clear that I was the victim of identity theft and wanted to cooperate fully with any investigation. The third call was to Richard Carraway, the old-school owner of Carraway and Associates, the real estate agency where Bridget worked. Mr. Carraway was a stickler for ethics and had built his reputation on honesty and transparency. I had a feeling he'd be very interested to learn about his star agent's creative bookkeeping. Mr. Carraway, this is Leo Thorne, Bridget's husband. I need to speak with you about some financial irregularities I've discovered. I think your agency might be at risk for some serious legal liability. By noon, I had set 3 different investigations in motion, but I wasn't done yet. Bridget had called me predictable, and she was right about one thing. I was going to be very predictable indeed. I spent the afternoon moving furniture, every piece of custom woodwork in our house, the dining room table, the bedroom set, the built-in bookcases, the restored antique armoire, even the hand-carved coat rack by the front door, had been built by me, with my tools, using materials I'd purchased. Legally, it was all my personal property, created before our marriage or gifted to the household by me personally. I rented a storage unit and a moving truck. By 6 o'clock, I had removed every single piece of quality furniture from our house, leaving behind only the mass-produced items Bridget had purchased: a cheap IKEA couch, a particle board coffee table, and a dining set that looked like it belonged in a college dorm room. The house looked like it had been robbed by very selective burglars. I was loading the last of my woodworking tools into my pickup truck when my phone rang. Bridget's number. Leo, honey, I'm going to be late tonight. Another staging appointment. Don't wait up for me, okay? Her voice was sweet as honey, exactly the same tone she'd used that morning when she kissed me goodbye. The same tone she'd probably used when she told Grant about her stupid husband. No problem, Bridge. Take all the time you need. You're the best, honey. Love you. Yeah, I said, watching the moving truck disappear around the corner with 8 years of my craftsmanship loaded in the back. Love you too. I hung up and smiled for the first time in 24 hours. Bridget thought she knew what predictable looked like. She was about to get a master class in the subject. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the familiar scent of wood and varnish, and I planned. By morning, I had a strategy that would have made Sun Tzu proud. Bridget came home at 2 in the morning, trying to be quiet as she slipped into bed beside me. I pretended to be asleep, listening to her whisper, "I love you," into her phone, before she thought I was safely unconscious. The same words she'd been saying to Grant for months. She left for work the next morning without going into the kitchen. Our usual routine was coffee and toast together, but she claimed she was running late for an important client meeting. I knew better now. She was probably meeting Grant for breakfast at some cozy cafe where they could plan their future together with my money. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Bridget's office. Carraway and Associates. This is Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. This is Leo Thorne. Is Mr. Carraway available? He's expecting my call. Richard Carraway was a man of his word. He'd spent the previous evening reviewing the evidence I'd provided, and he was not pleased with what he'd found. Bridget had been skimming commissions by underreporting sales prices to the agency while collecting full payments from clients, a scheme that not only defrauded her employer, but also had serious tax implications. Mr. Thorne, Caraway's gravelly voice carried the weight of 40 years in real estate. "I want to thank you for bringing this to my attention. We'll be conducting a full audit of Mrs. Vance's accounts, and I'm afraid her employment will be suspended pending the results of our investigation." "I understand, sir. I just want you to know that I had no knowledge of any of this until yesterday." "I believe you, son, and I want you to know that we'll be cooperating fully with any federal investigation that might arise from this matter." Federal investigation. Those words had a nice ring to them. At 10 a.m., I received a call from Jim Morrison. "Leo, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that we can absolutely freeze the joint assets based on the evidence of fraud you've provided. The bad news is that this is going to get ugly fast. Are you prepared for that?" "Jim, I've been married to a woman who's been stealing from me and planning to divorce me for months while I built her custom furniture and cooked her dinner every night. I think I can handle ugly." "Fair enough. I'll have the papers filed within the hour. She'll be served at her office this afternoon." "Perfect timing. She won't be there much longer." At 11 a.m., my phone rang. Bridget. "Leo, something weird is happening at work. Mr. Caraway wants to see me in his office, and Jennifer says there are some men in suits asking questions about my accounts. Do you know anything about this?" Her voice had lost its honey-sweet quality. Now she sounded nervous, uncertain. "Good. I have no idea, Bridge. Maybe it's just a routine audit or something. But why would they? I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. You're always saying how good you are at your job." There was a long pause. Yeah, you're right. I'm probably just being paranoid." "Probably. Hey, I'm going to be working late in the shop tonight, so don't worry about dinner for me." "Okay. Love you." "Uh-huh." I hung up and checked the time. In about 3 hours, Bridget would be served with divorce papers and suspended from her job on the same day. But I wasn't done yet. At noon, I drove to the jazz club where Silas had seen Bridget with Grant. It was closed during the day, but I knew the owner, Mickey Brennan, from some restoration work I'd done on his house. Mickey was a talker, and he loved gossip almost as much as he loved jazz. "Leo, what brings you by during the day?" "Hey, Mickey. I was wondering if you could help me with something. My wife Bridget has been coming here with some guy named Grant, and I think she might be in some kind of trouble. Financial trouble. I'm worried she might be getting scammed by this guy." Mickey's expression grew serious. "Grant Ashford? Tall guy, expensive suits, drives a silver Porsche? That sounds right. Leo, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but your wife's been coming in here for months with that guy. They're not just friends, if you know what I mean. And he's been bragging to anyone who'll listen about some big score he's got coming up. Something about offshore accounts and a perfect setup with some carpenter who doesn't know what's happening under his own roof." I kept my voice steady. "A carpenter?" "Yeah. He kept saying how easy it was to fool working-class guys because they don't understand high finance. Real piece of work, that Grant. But Leo, if your wife's mixed up with him..." "Thanks, Mickey. I appreciate you telling me." I drove home in a rage so pure it felt like clarity. Grant Ashford had been bragging about stealing from me. He'd been mocking me to strangers, calling me too stupid to notice what was happening in my own marriage. Well, Mr. Ashford was about to discover that this working-class guy understood a lot more than he'd bargained for. I spent the afternoon researching Grant Ashford online. Social media made it easy. The man couldn't post a photo without tagging his location and bragging about his lifestyle. He worked as a wealth management consultant for high-net-worth individuals, which seemed to be code for helps rich people hide their money from the government. He drove a restored 1987 Porsche 911 that he'd posted about extensively, complete with photos of the engine and detailed specifications. More importantly, he lived in a penthouse apartment downtown with a doorman, valet parking, and 24-hour security. The kind of place that made a man feel untouchable. At 4:30, my phone exploded with calls. First Bridget, then 3 more calls in rapid succession. I let them all go to voicemail. Bridget's message was frantic. Leo, something's wrong. They suspended me from work, and there are all these papers about divorce and frozen accounts, and I don't understand what's happening. Please call me back, please. I deleted the message and drove to the storage unit to retrieve something special. A rocking chair I'd built for Bridget's birthday 2 years ago. She'd claimed to love it, but I'd noticed she never actually sat in it. Now I knew why. She'd probably been too busy planning her exit strategy to appreciate handcrafted furniture. I loaded the chair into my truck and drove to Grant Ashford's building. The doorman at Grant's building was the chatty type, which worked perfectly for my purposes. I introduced myself as a furniture delivery specialist with a custom piece for Mr. Ashford, a surprise gift from his girlfriend. "Oh, you must mean Bridget." The doorman's face lit up. "She's such a lovely lady. Mr. Ashford talks about her all the time. Says she's going to be moving in here soon." That's what I hear. She wanted this to be a surprise for when she gets her divorce finalized. Well, isn't that romantic? You can leave it with me and I'll make sure he gets it. Actually, I need to set it up in his apartment. It's a custom rocking chair, and the balance has to be adjusted perfectly or it won't work right. Insurance liability, you understand. 20 minutes later, I was standing in Grant Ashford's penthouse apartment, ostensibly adjusting the rocking chair while actually taking a detailed inventory of his lifestyle. The man lived like a king. Expensive artwork, top-shelf liquor, a view of Boston Harbor that probably cost him $5,000 a month. What he didn't have was security cameras inside the apartment or any kind of sophisticated alarm system. Rich people often made the mistake of thinking that money equaled safety. I left the rocking chair positioned perfectly in front of his floor-to-ceiling windows and headed home. Bridget's car was in the driveway, which meant she'd come home early from her very bad day. I parked in the street and walked around to the back of the house, entering through my workshop. I could hear her inside the house, moving around frantically, opening and closing drawers, probably looking for documents or trying to figure out how much I knew. After about 10 minutes, she came out to the workshop. "Leo, are you in here?" I was sitting at my workbench, calmly sanding a piece of maple, when she burst through the door. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying, and her designer suit was wrinkled. "Leo, what the hell is going on? They fired me from work, and there are all these legal papers about divorce and frozen accounts, and I come home and all the furniture is gone." I looked up from my sanding block. "Fired? That's terrible, Bridge. What happened?" "They said I was stealing from the company. They said there were irregularities in my commission reports, and that someone had provided evidence of fraud. Leo, you have to believe me. I would never—" "Evidence of fraud?" I set down the sanding block and gave her my full attention. "What kind of evidence?" "Bank statements and account records and—" "Leo, do you know anything about an offshore account in the Cayman Islands?" "Should I? It's got your name on it, your social security number. They're saying you're the primary account holder, but I swear I don't know anything about it." I stood up slowly, brushing sawdust off my hands. "Let me get this straight. There's a secret offshore account with my name on it that you don't know anything about, but somehow the feds think you're involved in fraud?" "I don't know. Maybe someone stole your identity? Maybe it's all some kind of mistake?" "Maybe." I walked over to where she stood in the doorway, noting how she instinctively stepped back as I approached. "Or maybe you opened that account yourself using my information, thinking you could hide money from me while you planned your divorce." Her face went white. "Leo, I would never. Maybe you've been skimming commissions from your real estate deals and hiding the money offshore while you screwed your boyfriend and planned to take me for everything I'm worth." "How did you—" She caught herself, but it was too late. "How did I what, Bridge? How did I find out about Grant? How did I find out about your little plan to play the helpless wife while you robbed me blind?" She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of a plan falling apart. "Leo, please, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like." "Really? Then explain it to me. Explain why you've been meeting Grant at Mickey's Jazz Club for months. Explain why he's been bragging to strangers about his perfect setup with some stupid carpenter. Explain why you told him I was too predictable to notice what was happening under my own roof. Her tears stopped abruptly. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Leo, okay, yes, I've been seeing Grant, but it's not about the money. I fell in love with him and I didn't know how to tell you. The account thing is just, it's complicated. Complicated. I nodded thoughtfully. You know what else is complicated? Identity theft, tax evasion, fraud. Those are all federal crimes, Bridge, the kind that come with prison time. You wouldn't turn me in. You love me. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd been married to for 8 years, who I'd built furniture for and cooked dinner for and trusted completely. I did love you, but that was before I found out you were stealing from me, before I found out you were planning to destroy my life for money. Leo, please, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. You can go stay with Grant in his fancy penthouse and figure out your legal problems together, but you're not staying in my house. Your house? This is our house. No, Bridge, this is my house. I bought it before we got married, and it's in my name only, just like all the furniture I built, which is why I was legally entitled to remove it. You can't throw me out. I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference. But if you'd rather stay and wait for the federal agents to come looking for the primary account holder on that Cayman Islands account, that's your choice. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating her options. Finally, she turned and walked back toward the house. This isn't over, Leo. Yeah, it is. I listened to her pack for the next hour, throwing things into suitcases with the kind of frantic energy that comes from a life falling apart. When her car finally pulled out of the driveway, I allowed myself a small smile. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. 3 days passed before I heard from Bridget again. 3 days during which I learned some very interesting things about Grant Ashford and his business practices. It turns out that when you help wealthy people hide their money from the government, you make enemies in high places. Grant was already under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for several questionable investment schemes, and his client list read like a who's who of tax evaders and money launderers. More importantly, I learned that Grant's expensive lifestyle was mostly financed by credit and leveraged investments. The penthouse was rented, not owned. The Porsche was leased. Even his expensive suits were purchased with credit cards that were approaching their limits. In other words, Grant Ashford was a fraud who made his living helping other frauds hide their money. And now he was about to discover what happened when the house of cards collapsed. On Thursday evening, my phone rang. Bridget. Leo, we need to talk. Do we? Grant says you've been harassing him, calling his office, asking questions about his business. He says you're trying to sabotage his career. Grant says a lot of things. Most of them aren't true. Look, I know you're angry, but this has gone far enough. I'm willing to work out a settlement. We can split everything 50-50 and call it even. I laughed out loud. Split what, Bridge? Your offshore account is frozen. You've been fired from your job, and according to my lawyer, you're looking at federal charges for identity theft and tax evasion. What exactly do you think you have to bargain with? I have information about you that you wouldn't want made public. Such as? Such as the fact that you've been doing cash jobs for years without reporting the income. Tax evasion works both ways, Leo. She was bluffing, and we both knew it. I'd always been meticulous about reporting my income, partly because I was naturally honest, and partly because I was too smart to give the IRS any reason to audit me. Nice try, Bridge. But unlike you, I actually pay my taxes. We'll see about that. Grant has connections, people who can make your life very difficult. Grant's connections are about to become his biggest problem. Did you know he's under federal investigation? Did you know his business license is being reviewed by the state? Did you know that 3 of his biggest clients have been arrested for money laundering in the past month? Silence on the other end of the line. Here's the thing about guys like Grant, I continued. They're great at spending other people's money, but when the heat comes down, they run. And they don't take their girlfriends with them. You don't know what you're talking about. We'll see. I hung up and checked the time. In about 2 hours, Grant would be getting a very interesting phone call from someone claiming to represent the SEC. The call would inform him that his assets were being frozen pending a federal investigation and that he should prepare for imminent arrest. The call would be fake, of course, but Grant wouldn't know that. At exactly 10 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Leo Thorne? Depends who's asking. This is Grant Ashford. We need to talk. Do we? Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it ends now. Bridget is with me, and she's going to stay with me. You can accept that and move on with your life, or you can keep playing these childish games and see what happens. Childish games? Is that what you call protecting myself from identity theft? I call it harassment, and if it doesn't stop, I'm going to make you very sorry. You know, Grant, I've been looking into your business practices. Very interesting stuff, especially that thing with the Pemberton account. The feds are going to love that when they find out about it. Another silence. Longer this time. What do you want? I want you to understand something. You picked the wrong carpenter to mess with. You thought you could steal from me and mock me and walk away clean. But here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to disappear from my wife's life, and you're going to do it tonight. Or what? Or tomorrow morning. Every federal agency in Boston gets a detailed report about your business practices, your client list, and your offshore banking arrangements. And unlike Bridget, I actually have evidence. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. You're bluffing. Am I? Tell you what, Grant, don't disappear. Stick around. Keep dating my wife. Let's see who's bluffing. The line went silent. 2 hours later, Bridget called me, sobbing. Leo, something's wrong with Grant. He got some kind of phone call, and now he's packing everything. He says he has to leave town for business, but he won't tell me when he's coming back. That's too bad, Bridge. He won't even let me go with him. He says it's too dangerous, whatever that means. Leo, I think he's abandoning me. Shocking. Please, Leo, I know I made mistakes, but I'm scared. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any money. They froze all my accounts. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal from me. I never meant for it to go this far. I got caught up in something I didn't understand. Grant said it would be easy, that you'd never find out, that we could just disappear and start over somewhere else. And you believed him. I was stupid. I know that now. But Leo, please, can't we work something out? I'm your wife. No, Bridge. You're my soon-to-be ex-wife. There's a difference. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Maybe you should have asked yourself that question before you opened a fraudulent bank account in my name. I hung up and turned off my phone. I had work to do. The next morning, I drove to Grant's building. The doorman confirmed what I already suspected. Mr. Ashford had checked out in the middle of the night, leaving no forwarding address. He'd also left behind one custom rocking chair, which the building management was happy to let me retrieve. As I loaded the chair back into my truck, I reflected on the week's events. In 7 days, I had exposed my wife's fraud, ended her career, initiated divorce proceedings, frozen her assets, and scared her boyfriend out of town. Not bad for a predictable working-class guy who supposedly didn't understand high finance. But I still had one more surprise for Bridget. That afternoon, I called Jim Morrison. Jim, remember that offshore account Bridget opened in my name? I've been thinking about it, and I want to make sure I understand the legal implications. Well, since your name is on the account as the primary holder, and since you can prove you were the victim of identity theft, you have a strong legal claim to recover any funds that were placed there fraudulently, even if Bridget deposited the money herself. Especially then, She used your identity without permission to hide assets during your marriage. That makes you the legal owner of those assets, regardless of their source. And the money she skimmed from her real estate commissions? That's between her and her former employer, but any funds she placed in an account using your name belong to you now. I smiled. Jim, I want you to file a claim to recover all funds from that account, every penny. Leo, that's over $200,000. I know exactly how much it is. I also know that Bridget spent 8 months planning to steal it from me. Now I'm taking it back. This is going to destroy her financially. Jim, she destroyed herself financially when she decided to commit identity theft. I'm just making sure she doesn't profit from it. That evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools and materials of my trade, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The custom kitchen island was partially reassembled on my workbench, its hidden compartments once again holding the documents that belonged there. The offshore account that Bridget had opened to finance her new life was now legally mine, along with every penny she'd hidden there. Tomorrow, Bridget would discover that her safety net had disappeared. Grant was gone. Her job was gone. Her hidden money was gone. And her marriage was gone. She'd be left with nothing but the consequences of her choices and the memory of the stupid carpenter who'd turned out to be smarter than she'd bargained for. I picked up a piece of cherry wood and began to sand it smooth. I had a new project in mind. A jewelry box for the woman I'd eventually marry someday. Someone who understood the value of honesty, loyalty, and craftsmanship that was built to last. Someone who would never mistake kindness for stupidity or trust for weakness. Someone who would never underestimate the precision of a man who measured twice and cut once. As I worked, I thought about Bridget and Grant and their perfect plan to steal from the predictable carpenter. They'd been right about one thing. I was predictable. Predictably thorough, predictably methodical, and predictably unwilling to let anyone destroy what I'd built with my own hands. They'd wanted to cut me down to nothing. Instead, they'd learned what happened when you tried to cut a man who knew exactly where to place the blade for maximum damage. Sometimes the only thing left to do is cut to the bone and leave it bleeding.